Very warm welcome now to Air Marshal Rob Chipman, who is Chief of the Australian Air Force. Welcome.
Well, good morning, Air and Space Chiefs from around the world, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to start by thanking Air Chief Marshal Sir Richard Knighton for his kind invitation to speak with you all today and congratulate him on his 4-year appointment as Chief of Air Staff. I know that we will work together well, Sir Rich, and I look forward to that throughout your tenure. Many of us here today derive our customs and traditions from the Royal Air Force. Last week in Australia was NAIDOC Week, a celebration of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture. It was an opportunity for all Australians to reflect on 60,000 years of customs and traditions, the oldest surviving culture on our earth. I have the privilege of leading a modern air force in an ancient land. It's an intersection of cultures that is entirely complementary. It helped me understand that my task is not to run Air Force, but to look after it. So let me share with you my approach to looking after the Australian Air Force in a challenging present and an uncertain future. Australia is on the southern flank of the Rimlands, connected to Asia by an archipelagic bridge at the fulcrum of the Indian and Pacific Oceans. This is the Indo-Pacific region. It's a region that connects the world's mineral and energy resources from Africa and the Middle East to the powerhouse economies in East Asia and on further to markets that have driven global prosperity for over 70 years. And it's a region that has emerged as the epicentre for great power competition. A rising power seeking greater influence, an established power seeking to uphold the character of international cooperation that has underpinned an extraordinary period of peace and security around the globe. Neither is going away, which is to say we now live in a multipolar world. Australia looks through our region to the rest of the world. We do so with the humility of a middle power, with the aspiration of preserving an international order where the rights and sovereign choices of all nations are respected, and with the realism of knowing that in a multipolar world, we can only achieve that with the stable balance of power. Recently, Australia's Prime Minister delivered an address to the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore. He noted that if this breaks down, if one nation imagines itself too big for the rules or too powerful to be held to the standards that the rest of us expect, then our region's strategic stability is undermined and individual national sovereignty is eroded. Stability is not a passive state of affairs. It is achieved through strength and active diplomacy. Diplomacy, in turn, requires transparency, dialogue, and compromise. It is axiomatic of Australia's strategic culture that we will always seek to work with allies and partners in defence of common interests. But the Indo-Pacific region lacks a collective military alliance as Europe has in NATO. We rely instead on a number of multilateral fora to promote dialogue and cooperation. None is more important than ASEAN. Australia's strategic partnership with ASEAN and our respect for ASEAN's centrality in the Indo-Pacific region is a key tenet of our foreign policy. Similarly, the Pacific Island Forum, the Indian Ocean Rim Association, helped to bring nations together. The Quad relationship between Australia, India, Japan and the United States seeks to foster an open, stable and prosperous Indo-Pacific region. It doesn't displace other forums, it creates a new pathway for regional cooperation. This mesh network of multilateral forums lacks NATO's central organising principle, but it helps to create the strategic space nations need to exercise their sovereignty, resolve disputes, build consensus, and collectively resist coercion and belligerence. It would be strategically myopic for the rest of the world to view the Indo-Pacific region in isolation. So Rich, here's another statistic that might surprise you. We are closer to Beijing here in London than my office is back in Canberra. It's impossible to imagine, particularly in the wake of COVID-19, that a calamity in the Indo-Pacific region would not reverberate around the globe. The emergence of cyber and space domains, along with the convergence of digital technologies, means that we're all now more interconnected than ever. What matters in the Indo-Pacific matters here in Europe, and vice versa. And nothing brings that into sharper relief than the current crisis facing Europe in Ukraine. The attendance by the Australian Prime Minister at NATO's summit in Vilnius, Lithuania, speaks to this global connectedness, as does Australia's ongoing and consequential support to the people of Ukraine. This week, the Prime Minister announced that Australia will deploy an E-7 Wedgetail to Germany to help surveil the skies over an important military assistance gateway, to ensure that the essential supply of military assistance into Ukraine is not disrupted by Russian attack. We stand with Ukraine for the long haul, and we will now help our allies and partners keep her vital lines of communication open. This whirlpool of geopolitical, geostrategic, geoeconomical challenges present a range of traditional and non-traditional security challenges. In response, the Australian Government has just undertaken a Defence Strategic Review, which directs ambitious reform to our force structure, our force posture, and our preparedness. It's recognition that our strategic circumstances are deteriorating and that we must strengthen our readiness to respond to a more specific set of challenges. Australia will focus our efforts on national defence, underpinned by an active statecraft to preserve the regional balance of power. This requires Australia to deepen our diplomatic engagement while building stronger military capabilities that help deter coercion and lower the risk of conflict. Informed through net assessment, Australia will execute a strategy of denial to hold potential adversaries at risk further from our shores. To maximise our deterrence and response options, the Australian Defence Force will continue our evolution to an integrated force, harnessing warfighting effects across all 5 warfighting domains. We've commenced our organisational alignment with this new approach, with the move of Space Command into Joint Capabilities Group. And we're joined today by my good friend, Lieutenant General JJ Fruin, who has just taken responsibility for force generating Australia's space capability. And he's here to continue the great partnerships that we've established to strengthen our collective capabilities in space. Australia has also centralised the management of our most precious resource, our people, to ensure that we prioritise our people evenly across all 5 domains and to the parts of our organisation that are responsible for integrating those 5 domains. We've established a guided weapons and explosive ordnance enterprise under a new 3-star command. Air Marshal Leon Phillips will strengthen our stock holdings of guided weapons and address supply chain vulnerabilities, which will include an uplift in our sovereign capability to manufacture and sustain weapons. In order to fund these essential changes, we will accelerate a number of acquisitions and reprioritise others. These adjustments are being delivered with urgency, a renewed effort to cut through bureaucratic process and expedite the delivery of capabilities to our flight line. How long have we aspired to make that change? To reduce red tape, embrace innovation, partner with industry and accelerate capability to our warfighters. How many times have you heard that said? Well, in Australia, our assessment is that we're no longer doing that for an operational efficiency. Our strategic circumstances demand it of us. So what does all this mean for air power and for the Air Force more specifically? When I came into this role as Chief of Air Force, I made clear my 3 priorities: to build a ready, resilient and resourceful Air Force. Readiness requires us to focus on delivering capability today while simultaneously investing in our capabilities for the future. Readiness demands tactical and operational excellence in high-end warfighting, integrated across the Joint Force, across government and with our allies and partners. It means having the capacity to sustain high-intensity conflict. Resilience requires a deep understanding of our vulnerabilities and an acknowledgement that we will fight with degraded systems in a contested environment. Our air bases are no longer sanctuaries. We must be capable of conducting agile operations, manoeuvring across dispersed and hardened network of air bases to survive and to maintain our initiative. This approach will drive changes in combat support, in logistics and in command and control. We look to your example here in Europe, in Finland, Sweden and Norway especially, for inspiration for this important work. These changes require a workforce that is innovative and resourceful, constantly challenging ourselves to accelerate, working with industry and academia to put minimum viable capabilities on the tarmac in the minimum time available, while building development pathways to integrate new technologies over time. I don't aspire as Chief to be the smartest aviator in the room. What I aspire to do is to create an environment that harnesses the resourcefulness of my workforce. On our weapons courses and through the Air Warfare Centre, I have enormous trust and confidence in their ability. My objective is to create an environment permissive to their solutions. This is an innovation environment, innovation for strategic purpose and operational effect. It's the approach Australia is now taking with the MQ-28 GOSPAT. We will deliver an uncrewed platform that will team with crewed platforms to increase the lethality and survivability of our air combat system. My team is working hard on the operational concepts, while I am working hard to ensure that the capability delivered achieves its value proposition. This is where Australia has placed our stake in the future of air combat. And we are increasing our workforce strength to optimise the productivity of our assets. This, of course, is not without precedent. At the outbreak of World War II, the Royal Australian Air Force comprised 3,500 people with 12 operational squadrons and approximately 250 aircraft. By the end of the war, we were the fourth largest air force in the world, behind the US, UK and Russia. More than 152,000 people operating nearly 6,000 aircraft from 70 operational squadrons. We're not preparing to mobilise on that scale in Australia today, but we are scaling up to optimise the productivity of our resources. So what lies ahead for Australia? Like all of you here today, my driving purpose is to avoid the calamity of war. We aspire to deter through strength and diplomacy. If successful, we'll encounter a future of enduring strategic competition, a future as a middle power of enduring struggle to force generate the capabilities our nations need to preserve our sovereignty. The fundamental role of air power for national defence remains immutable. We face a future of continuing investment in technology, locked in a race for technical advantage, for longer range weapons and more effective countermeasures, to fly higher and faster, turn tighter, think quicker, and to integrate more efficiently across the domains. I don't feel confident predicting what future technologies we will need to achieve these outcomes, but I do feel confident that we can build an organisation that is capable of delivering them over time. We must continually innovate tactically and operationally, focused on national defence, to bring these technologies rapidly into service, applying air power for asymmetric advantage. Importantly, we will apply greater scrutiny to the vulnerabilities of global supply and bake in sovereign resilience. And because as a middle power, we see the imperative for cooperation, we'll continue our efforts to be a strong regional partner. Australia remains a loyal and dependable mate, committed to a fair go for all. Let me close then with an obvious statement. We no longer think of our future as a distant contingency or concept. It's become a continuation of our contemporary circumstances, a reality that has rapidly accelerated towards us. Australia is embarked on substantial recalibration of our national security policy, a middle power strategy for navigating major power competition, preserving Australia's sovereignty through our commitment to regional security and the collective strength of our allies and partners. This is deterrence, our strategy of denial. And through our strategy of denial, integrated across all warfighting domains, balanced across all elements of national power, instrumented through the art of whole-of-government campaigning in cooperation with our allies and partners, Australia aspires to preserve a stable balance of power in the Indo-Pacific region. Thank you.